we will go back to talk about like on the more on the API management side and how finally to make these APIs and these LLM and AI compatible. You know, having your own APIs, get into LLMs or into LLM plugins or stuff like that. So this is why we will have Alexandre Airvault from with us from Blobr. You're on mute, Alexander. But
Hey, everyone. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, we're really glad to have you. There have been a great debate this morning actually with Eric Newcomer about like LLM and APIs. Like, how can be sure we can still manage your APIs, or let's say publish our APIs and have safe interactions with LLMs. So I think yeah, your talk on how to make them compatible is and make them ready for AI is on point. So yeah, the stage is yours for 20 minutes plus 5 minute questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mehdi. Really excited to share what we have learned along the way. I'm going to share first a few insights about what we do at Blobr and explaining maybe a bit more from where we're speaking about. So what we do at Blobr is that we are kind of the Shopify for APIs. We help companies who have APIs to create their developer portal so that they can expose, manage, and monetize their APIs. We provide a sleek portal where the user can manage their API keys, they can have monitoring, have consistent information with documentation about the APIs. And we help the API providers to package the APIs to create API products that are easy to consume for the end users. So providing this breadth of features, we looked at AI as an extension of where we can build those API products and how we can make them consumable by through other sources. So what we have built actually at Blobr and we are releasing now is actually the possibility to create your ChatGPT plugin directly from Blobr. So on top of having your different endpoints available, you can now have a plugin that can be used in ChatGPT for now and other LLM next. So it makes the API consumable in a different way, and that's what I'm going to share. What we have learned the way we built the product and made a lot of tests building that. So definitely what you can see is that you can still have the list of endpoints on your portal, but then you can manage the usage of your plugin and get the link to make it work on LLMs. So what I'm going to speak about today is how LLMs are actually provoking a new paradigm for APIs. Our key learnings on the interaction between APIs and LLMs that we learned, and then how it's going to shape the APIs of tomorrow. So first, I think we all realized like less than a year ago that there was a big storm thanks to LLMs, very different actors. Some provide like OpenAI, I would say, open source solution. And then you have other solutions like Llama from Meta. You have Bard from Google. And you have this fierce war of AI that those big actors are doing. And definitely it makes the use of those LLMs very quickly super easy for anyone to plug data sources, and APIs are the oil that is actually plumbing those LLMs to provide the results. What we have seen is that before, APIs were mainly used by developers, so roughly 28 million developers in the world consuming APIs, making machine-to-machine connections. And now with LLMs, it's changing a lot, we believe, how APIs are going to be consumed, where potentially 7 billion users can directly consume the API, not even needing an integration from a developer. And we think that's a big change of how the market is going to change and the paradigm as well about how we are going to expose and consume APIs. And as an example, I'm taking 4 cases. One is from Zapier that is already connected to ChatGPT plugin. So really ChatGPT providing plugin where you can connect your API to ChatGPT, but on top you need a manifest file, which is a specific file describing how to interact with the API on top of the open API spec. Zapier has done that, and actually it's helping them to create new businesses, a new business, sorry. So in the sense that potential new customers can discover their service through ChatGPT and start to open an account on Zapier to create those apps that some of you might know, like integrations that you can do between different tools. Another one is Kayak, the service from which you can book plane tickets. So in this case, they provided a plugin so that you can require information for a flight and book directly from the plugin. Definitely, it's a new distribution channel for them. Really easy to use for the end users. Next one is HubSpot CRM, quite famous worldwide. What they have built is a ChatGPT plugin, kind of, meaning that it's not directly a plugin in ChatGPT, but it's the same underlying thing. And basically, it's helping other people, which are not salespeople, to consume and understand the data from HubSpot so that they can ask in natural language questions to the CRM. It's super powerful, so if you want to share with other team members. Then the final example is Pennylane, which is an accounting solution. And definitely for this solution, it's a good opportunity to upsell customers. So providing a new feature, not only going to the UI of the SaaS, but potentially you can connect through ChatGPT and ask questions, and they can monetize that. So there are very different ways to approach it and how you think about connecting your APIs to LLM. But what we see as quite common is that it's kind of similar to API landscape, meaning that either you share your API for your partners, your customers, or everyone else, so potentially new customers. It's kind of one for one same schema about how API are consumed by their environment. So for partners, growing a distribution channel is super important for Kayak. Existing customers, you can upsell customers with Pennylane, or it's as well useful for stickiness with HubSpot, and then creating new business with Zapier. Those companies, I was explaining kind of the ChatGPT plugin. I've created their plugin for some of them on ChatGPT, so that it can be consumed directly from the interface of OpenAI. You can just install a plugin, and then from this plugin you can ask questions related to the plugin, and the LLM will help to understand the question and make the right request to your API through the plugin. But you have as well the possibility to create your own plugin. So if you are a ChatGPT Plus today, you need to pay like $20 per month. You can start and ask for the access to develop your own plugin. So if you have an API, I'm sure most of you have, it's a good opportunity to try and learn directly from there. When those companies create plugins, actually you can connect public plugins like the one I was explaining from Kayak with your private plugin. But your private plugin can be from your own API because it's your own API service that you have created related to the data of your company, or it can be integrating a tool that you are using, a SaaS, directly in ChatGPT and try to interact between your data in the tool that you are using with public data from Kayak, for instance. So what I've done here, it's a cool example where I'm asking to book a trip from Paris to Rome with my wife, and I want to have some flight options to book a flight. So checking that with one public plugin from Kayak, and then I get as a response the options, and I want to make a task that I'm going to have a to-do-ist task to ask whether it's fine for my wife. So it's kind of automation that it's automatically done with ChatGPT, where it's going to provide the result from Kayak, understand the content of the result, and then create another task in Todoist. Just a small example to show that it's not only public APIs, but it's as well private APIs that you can link to ChatGPT. So what it means bringing APIs and how to make them compatible with ChatGPT. With Blobr, what we have done is we help companies to create plugins based on their own data or the APIs that they are using daily. So for instance, you can plug your Notion, you can plug any CRM that you might want to have. You can plug any tools that you are using as a SaaS. And what it brings is like a frictionless experience where you can share with teams that are not experts with the tool per se, to ask new questions that you were not easy to answer, or otherwise would require the expert to answer for those end users. So really, that's really helping to have data literacy in your team about all those topics. You can get as well complex insights that are not easy to uncover. So potentially linking different tools together, you can make it work. You can have, of course, the user experience enhanced, because part of the UI is dead thanks to APIs, because you can just ask questions in natural language. Big change in the experience from end users. And all of that, you can make it work in 5 minutes, and you don't need to make the integrations one by one, trying to make the integration for a specific topic. But once you have integrated an API and the plugin the right way, you can ask all the questions related to the data and potentially link it to other tools. So really powerful, and bringing a new type of scenarios and use cases right now. A cool example is an example from Salesforce. We're not using Salesforce. It's not real data I'm sharing. But as you can see, Salesforce can be complex, and you need sometimes to be an expert to use it, right? On the left, and quite often, a cool questions could be, hey, I have a sales meeting in 5 minutes. Can you give me a quick summary about a specific client? And then it provides the details about the clients, where we are in negotiation, to provide some hints, or potentially, if you provide as well your value proposition, some good questions to ask to your clients or your prospects. So really helpful to get data and extract data from the tools that you have, and make them easy to understand and query. That's bringing a lot of cool new use cases, but still there are limitations. Just before, Pablo was mentioning a few of those limitations, and I can only concur. Huge data sets will provoke hallucinations, and there is a limitation in the context window, so what you can send to the LLM. So you cannot send too much information. What we have seen as well is that you need to document APIs in a specific way. If you do not document well your APIs, so if you do not have like description of your endpoints, description of your data points, if you do not have operation ID, the LLM will not be able to understand. There are as well other things that needs to be really crystal clear, from your spec. So really having like a clear description of your endpoint, what it's intended to do, and having a maximum of query parameter helps to for the LM to understand your APIs better and know how to query it, and you have less wrong answers from ChatGPT thanks to that. So really, when you are using as well ChatGPT with your own plugin, you need to be sure that you select the right plugin, because as you can select different plugins together to make them work together, you need to be sure you select the right ones to make them work. That's where the concept of API product is super important, because if you have a huge API with many endpoints to query in ChatGPT, it will not work. You need to have an API with only a few endpoints, a few functions that can be called directly from ChatGPT. So really thinking API products helps a ton in this context. And definitely, ChatGPT can be as good as the data that you feed him. So in this example, you cannot expect the moon from the data if it's not well structured and your API is not well structured. It's only as good as your API, and you really need to consider that for LLMs if you want to plug your existing APIs or APIs from other SaaS. And last thing I wanted to share as well is definitely that with the ChatGPT plugin creator, we are helping companies to create their ChatGPT plugin in seconds. So from their API, we create a wrapper simplifying the API, transforming the API into products that are different use cases that are easier to understand from ChatGPT, avoiding hallucinations, trying to reduce the content that is shared in real time to the plugin. And all of this makes it better using a ChatGPT plugin, for instance. But you can as well manage granular access to data and rate limits, because still you do not want to share your plugin with anyone and having like open bar consumption to your API. You still want to have like some control and management of the content that you share. So potentially you want as well to be able to filter some confidential information. So potentially email address, unique user ID that you want to filter out dynamically before that you send it to LLM. And then finally, you want to have visibility about how your APIs are used by ChatGPT. Understanding what are the questions potentially that are asked to your APIs, and to dynamically improve the content of your ChatGPT plugin, your plugin for LLMs. So based on the data on the data from the questions that you have, you can iterate on the plugin that you provide. And finally, there is the monetization option that is, of course, interesting still, where in some cases you want to monetize your ChatGPT plugin, and that's quite linked as well to the API monetization space, with some different things where we see that it's a bit more subscription model at the moment and not really pay-per-use model that are applied, because it's not still a mature space and it needs some time evolving from a subscription to pay-per-use model. That was it for me. We are working a lot with the team on all of this. Happy to share and answer questions if there is any.
Thank you very much, Alexander. One question about like how it's easy to use the, let's say, for example, ChatGPT plugin.
So it really depends on the structure of your API. So if you have a good, your API is ready to use it, to be used by LLM, it takes like 2 minutes, literally.
Wow,
You
okay.
just so if you use Blobr, it takes 2 minutes. If you create your manifest, you need to understand a bit how it works, but that's not the most complex part. The most complex part is trying to understand how the LLM works to make your API work with the LLM. So once it's ready, it's quite straightforward to use it. The manifest is basically providing information about how the machine should think about your API and when to use it. And then you need to have a clean API spec. So open API spec, and then you are good to go.
Okay, quite interesting on the ease to do it. So I have a personal question here. 25 years ago, like 20 years ago, people used to say, if you're not indexed by Google, you don't exist, because if you don't allow robot.txt to crawl your website, you will not appear into search engines. And so when people will search on search engine, they will not find you, at least on Google. For LLMs, do you consider that at some point, for example, ChatGPT is 100 million users, they may have 1 billion users in, I don't know, a few months, few years.
Mhm.
If your APIs, if your data, if your, like Kayak or others, are not indexed or does not train LLMs, you will not exist in this new interface. Do you consider that?
So Yeah, that I think that's the main question everyone is asking. I have some discussions on that, but hard to figure out how what would be the next world. And I would not commit on a specific opinion on this, right? But what we see is definitely that people using LLMs at the moment, plugins, they try when people start to use the LLMs for free. So they provide more services for free, and then they try to bring back to their services on their websites to trying to circumvent a bit OpenAI or ChatGPT for the moment. But still, I believe it's not going to last. So um, it will be more a question about how your LLM, how your API is LLM compatible, and the best way to approach that, I would say that it's to be the first one to have the right API that can be consumed by LLMs.
Yeah, okay. So like it's really hard to find if it will be a great opportunity, but be there at least, so when people will look for it, they will know you. Yeah, because for example, the example of kayak, if you ask an LLM what's the best cheapest flight to go from that way, if you're not there, you cannot be compared by the LLM, right? So yeah, it's the fight for the user interface and the user time and interaction. So yeah, no, extremely interesting. Also, one question about like the compliance and security, like having a gateway kind of that you provide, like how it helps, to have a better security, or being sure that the data, only the data you want to go there, is going there.
So, for instance, we do some real-time transformations about the data required by the LLM. So, for instance, if I take the example of Todoist, when you ask all the tasks from the LLM, you might ask like the tasks that are specific to a specific day or a specific project. And when you ask the data, you don't want all the data from all your Todoist to be sent to the LLM, and you want to filter out only the data for the project. So the proxy from a Blobr is going to filter out this data to send only the needed data to the LLM. Still, the data is transiting at the moment through Blobr, but definitely we have plans to make it used locally, so that you can host it as well locally to avoid any data transmitted to external parties. So trying to share only what is needed is a way to avoid sharing too much information as well from the LLMs. That's one way to circumvent that. And then you were mentioning Mistral, definitely some. Uh, I've heard from the speech before. Um, Really interesting what is going to happen in Europe with all the talents that we have. We have opportunity as well to do something about this.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alexander. Thank you. And again, if you don't want to know more, you can go on blubber.io for that. Thank you.
Thank you.